When you think of the 1990s, you might think of things like the Star Wars prequels, the X-Files, and grunge rock. But right there alongside the movies, shows, and records of the decade are welcome memories of the all-weird, eye-catching, and totally 90s things we used to eat. So, today we're going to take a look at some tasty tidbits about staple foods of the 1990s. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. And after that, please leave a comment and let us know what other nostalgic food staples you would like to hear about. Okay, someone cue up Jerry Springer because this 90s lunch is served. Sunny Delight, or Sunny D if you're cool and somehow also still living in the year 1996, was invented in Florida in 1963. Only Florida would invent an orange juice substitute in a state that depends on oranges to survive. But it didn't really take off until the 1990s, where popular commercials highlighted Sunny D's superiority to inferior drinks like Purple Stuff.
Oh, yay, Purple Stuff, Sunny Delight.
This was especially true in the United Kingdom, where the drink became the 12th best-selling grocery product pretty much overnight. Sunny Delight was originally promoted as a healthy fruit drink that was like orange juice, if you mixed it with a few other drinks and watered it down with room-temperature ice cubes. But while it may have looked like orange juice, consumers would later discover it was closer to a soft drink. As more and more kids imbibed the bright orange beverage, however, a slightly more unnerving problem arose. In 1999, a toddler in Wales who drank Sunny D in large quantities began to turn yellow-orange. The skin color alteration was due to high levels of beta-carotene, the additive that gives Sunny Delight its characteristic hue. A spokesperson for the company argued that the child just drank way too much of the stuff, and that the condition was harmless and would soon return to normal. But people were understandably a little freaked out anyway. You can't just give a baby the complexion of a Simpsons character and not upset anyone. Anyone who lived in the same space as a microwave probably ate their weight in SpaghettiOs in the 90s. But despite their overwhelming popularity in the decade of Friends and ER, the Campbell's Soup Company actually introduced SpaghettiOs in the market way back in 1965. Invented by Donald Gork, SpaghettiOs were created to be less messy than traditional spaghetti, which they kind of are, as long as you eat them with a spoon and not, like, your hands. In fact, early marketing material touted the canned pasta as the neat round spaghetti you can eat with a spoon. Interestingly, the famous catchphrase jingle, "Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs," was also part of the initial marketing. The relentless earworm was loosely based on the "Oh Oh, I'm Falling in Love Again" by Jimmie Rodgers, who also sang the jingle. Bologna, which is not spelled anything close to how it's pronounced because the world is a cruel place, was a lunchtime staple for every kid who ever ate lunch out of a paper bag with their name written on it. But the mystery meat actually traces its origins back to Italy, where it is intricately linked to the traditional Italian sausage called mortadella. Mortadella originated in Bologna, Italy, and its ingredients aren't a mystery. It's made of pork. Like many other types of cured meats, it was popular by the Middle Ages, and during the 17th century, counterfeit versions appeared. As a result, making mortadella was officially tasked to a guild associated with the meat, and they were super serious about it. Anyone else that tried to make mortadella could reportedly be issued a fine or even stretched on the rack, presumably right next to a nice strip of mortadella. Bologna is similar to mortadella, but it's made of chicken, pork, beef, or other animal products. According to some, Italian immigrants brought bologna to the US, while others claim it has German influences. But that may be due to the popularization of the lunch meat by Oscar Mayer, who had that catchy jingle about their bologna having a first and second name.
My bologna has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R.
Oscar Mayer, who was a real guy, arrived in the US with his German family when he was a teenager. Alongside his brother, he sold bologna at a meat shop in Chicago during the early 20th century. Because bologna was more affordable than other cured meat, it was especially popular during the Great Depression. Thanks to the invention of sliced bread in 1928, a bologna sandwich became a convenient and cheap way to eat. So, it was literally the greatest sliced meat since the invention of sliced bread. People in the 1990s loved Hamburger Helper. It provided an easy way for latchkey kids and brutally hungover adults to make a complete meal using only an inexpensive box of noodles and seasoning, and a pound of fresh to gently spoiled meat. But it actually came from an effort to combat rising meat prices and a general lack of supplies during the 1970s. Companies like Betty Crocker looked to make a buck helping people stretch their meat supply, figuratively. but maybe also literally, rationing was a weird time. This new aim towards thriftiness led to several new products. Of course, when it comes to making meat last longer, the options are pretty limited. You can either freeze it or, bury it in a time capsule, maybe. The only other thing you can do is make meat-centric dishes that use as little meat as possible. Not enough to fill any bellies, but just enough to make everyone vaguely sad. One of the methods they came up with was to mix the meat with noodles and other carbohydrates, which were more affordable. And it was in that spirit that Hamburger Helper was born. As the name suggests, Hamburger Helper was a way to, well, help hamburgers. A hamburger assistance program, if you will. Except the help in this instance was to help consumers feed their entire household using a relatively small amount of meat, but it also offered additional perks. It was easy to prepare and only required one pan, making cleanup a breeze. And with the initial 5 hamburger helpers being beef noodle, potato stroganoff, hash, rice oriental, and chili tomato, it offered enough variety to keep meals interesting. Today there are more than 40 varieties. And how much more help can you really ask for? If you never ate molten chocolate cake in the 1990s, that's because you didn't visit enough themed restaurants. A dessert menu staple of chain restaurants with at least one airport location, the chocolate cake with a saucy inside was first created by chef Jean-Georges von Grichten in 1987. And even then, it was only created by dumb luck. There were predecessors to the molten lava cake that resembled von Richten's, specifically one created by chef Michel Brasse of France as early as 1981, but they weren't exactly the same. Von Grichten's cake was the result of accidental underbaking, while Brasse developed more of a type of cookie dough with chocolate in the center. Wait, cookie dough? Where can we get that cake? Other potential molten chocolate cake ancestors include the tunnel of fudge cake made by the second-place finisher in a Pillsbury bake-off in 1966, and a more recent creation by chocolatier Jacques Torres in France. In any case, hopefully mankind will continue to innovate and excel in the area of cakes that bleed chocolate like that elevator in The Shining every time you take a bite. Fish sticks. The great parental compromise for kids who won't eat seafood. These breaded and fried strips of Poseidon's bounty were a regular fixture for many families in the 90s who spent time in the frozen food aisle. But they're quite a bit older than that and were created to help offload a bunch of ocean scraps. Historian Paul Josephson, who is apparently completely unconcerned with protecting anyone's appetite, calls the development of fish sticks the result of a need to process and sell tons of fish that were harvested from the ocean, filleted, and frozen in huge solid blocks. His article on the topic, which has the fantastic title, "The Ocean's Hot Dog, The Development of the Fish Stick," highlights how the breaded slabs of pressed fish met the needs of fish suppliers as well as a growing consumer culture during the 1950s. But regardless of what they're made of, and it's mostly Alaska pollock for the record, fish sticks bring to mind cafeteria lunchrooms and diners alike for many individuals who grew up during the 1990s. In one part of the US, however, fish sticks and professional hockey found a surprising and embarrassing connection during the same decade. The New York Islanders hockey team introduced a new mascot in the mid-90s that bore a striking resemblance to the Gorton's fisherman, the mascot of Gorton's Seafood, who, among other things, produces a whole bunch of fish sticks. So when they saw the new mascot, fans of opposing teams would start chanting, "We want fish sticks." Islanders fans also hated the mascot and created banners that said, "Fish sticks are for dinner, not our logo." The mascot wasn't actually inspired by Gorton's. It was a tribute to the Billy Joel song, "The Downeaster Alexa," which the team felt personified the Long Island coastal experience, but apparently just made everyone think about fish sticks and not the Piano Man. Despite the negative reactions, the Islanders kept the mascot for more than 2 years before rebranding to their original logo in 1997. Salisbury steak is typically associated with 1990s cafeteria lunches and 1950s TV dinners, and no other period in between. It is a temporal anomaly of budget meal preparation. One taste of its signature mushroom and onion sauce will instantly transport you back to middle school during the Clinton administration. But Salisbury steak originated as a way of curing digestive issues during the 19th century, an exciting time in which gravy-soaked meat could still be considered medicine. Dr. James Salisbury was an American physician who was after a cure for chronic diarrhea. The cure wasn't for himself, though. It was for the troops fighting the Civil War, which gives the Battle of Bull Run an entirely new meaning. As part of his efforts, Salisbury developed a diet of broiled meat and clear liquids but devoid of fruits, vegetables, and acidic additives. He found the diet reduced bloating and diarrhea in test subjects, and again later when he distributed it amongst members of the military. Salisbury didn't serve his ground beef plain, but rather covered in butter, salt, pepper, and gravy. After all, the man was a doctor. He even published a book on his diet and attracted some fairly dedicated followers, sort of like a 19th century Dr. Atkins. The dish was a staple for the military well into the 20th century, but according to reports, in the cookbook of the United States Navy of 1904, it was listed as hamburger steak. This name was later considered too German-sounding, so it was renamed after the diarrhea chef PhD himself, James Salisbury. Pizza Hut changed the world forever in 1995 with the introduction of the stuffed crust pizza. The Hut was already a 90s staple at that point thanks to tie-ins with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Uncanny X-Men, but jamming their crusts full of delicious melted cheese made it a destination for adults as well. Unless you believe Angelo Anthony Mongello, who claims to have patented the style in 1987. The New Jersey pizza maker actually sued Pizza Hut over the incredibly valuable idea, but because his patent was for stuffing shells rather than for the style of crust itself, the suit was dismissed. When stuffed crust pizzas hit the market, the concept really took off. Around the world, people even started stuffing crusts with different fillings that reflected local palates. In Australia, Vegemite, made from yeast extract, vegetable flavoring, and spices, was stuffed into pizza crusts, while Hong Kong enjoyed crusts full of fish eggs. Sure, I guess you could do that to a pizza.
No, God!
And in Japan, stuffed crust pizzas with pockets of shrimp, sausage, camembert cheese, and mozzarella cheese was introduced in 2015. Like we said, stuffed crust pizza changed the world. Kid Cuisine frozen dinners were TV dinners created specifically for kids in the 1990s. So much so that their mascots were a skateboarding penguin and a polar bear wearing sunglasses. They featured kid-friendly meals like pizza, chicken nuggets, hamburgers, and macaroni and cheese, alongside side dishes and a dessert. And while the nutritional value, or lack thereof, immediately raised eyebrows, the brand developed a reputation for being a fast way for adults to feed their kids. So it thrived. Hey, it's cheaper than takeout, and that penguin looks like he's having a good time. Kid Cuisine was particularly shrewd with its marketing. It didn't just appeal to parents' wallets. It aimed to lure kids in as well by participating in cross-promotions with popular kids' movies, like Oliver and Company, The Jungle Book, and The Swan Princess. Their commercials were also heavily geared towards children, as the company embraced what is known as the pester factor. That's essentially the likelihood that a kid will annoy their parents to death if the kids don't buy them whatever cool thing they saw in a commercial. Kid Cuisine is still around and still includes foods like chicken nuggets, corn dogs, macaroni, french fries, and brownies with sprinkles, in the company's continued effort to make mealtime fun. It's unclear whether they still have that pester factor, but that penguin probably has a TikTok. So what do you think? Which of these staple 90s foods were your favorite? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other weird history food videos.